Now it's 100-fold. With any mistake that you make is glorified, and you have the haters and the trolls and all that stuff. So it's very hard to figure out who you are in the spotlight of everybody else.
You grew up watching Oprah Winfrey as America's favorite auntie. The woman who made you cry, made you believe in yourself, who built a media empire on empathy, vulnerability, and live your best life. For decades, she was untouchable, the ultimate symbol of rising from nothing and using power for good. But a growing number of people who actually worked with her, competed with her, or got destroyed by her are saying the same thing. The public Oprah and the private Oprah are two different people. What if the most powerful woman in media spent years protecting the same sick power structures she claimed to fight against? What if the same person who platformed victims also helped silence others when it suited her? And what if the latest leaks connecting her to Diddy are the crack that finally forces the full picture into the open? This is not the soft version of the story. This is the version coming from people who say they lived it. Chapter 1. The Saint Image and the Growing Cracks. Oprah Winfrey spent more than 40 years constructing the most carefully protected brand in modern entertainment. She was the undisputed queen of daytime television. She could take an unknown author and turn them into a millionaire overnight with a single book club endorsement. She turned personal pain into national conversation and made millions of people feel like she was speaking directly to them. She looked into the camera with that signature mix of empathy and authority, and convinced America she was the ultimate safe space, the woman who had risen from nothing and now used her power only for good. That image was never accidental. It was infrastructure. Every tear, every aha moment, every carefully staged vulnerability served a larger purpose, to make the brand feel unassailable. As long as the public saw her as the moral center of the industry, the harder questions stayed off limits. But the people who actually shared rooms, deals, and power with her started talking a long time ago. Their version of Oprah does not match the one that aired 5 days a week for decades. Toni Braxton has been open about the first time they met.
She was so freaking mean to me. I was in shock.
Do you take responsibility for the situation that you're in right now?
100%.
100%.
100%. I couldn't believe it because I loved her so much. I admired her and looked up to her. And she pretty much reprimanded me.
I read that you were upset about stories that your overspending caused this.
She says to me, I hear you have Gucci flatware. I'm Oprah Winfrey and I don't have Gucci flatware.
Monique has spent years saying the same thing in different words.
What Sidney Poitier say? It's not how many times you say yes. It's how many times you say no. And the moment our baby auditioned, they got set up for no trailers. They got set up for no food. They got set up for no drivers, because now in their mind, they think you're desperate.
Right.
So when Oprah does the one-on-one with Taraji and she begins to run down her credits, the great Taraji P. Henson, then why ever would you allow the audition to happen?
The pattern that keeps surfacing is consistent. When a person or a story threatened the structure Oprah moved inside, the famous empathy vanished. When powerful men needed covering or difficult truths needed softening, the silence was loud and strategic. She had the biggest platform in the world and repeatedly chose when to use it and when to withhold it. Suge Knight has publicly placed her in circles connected to some of the most infamous private islands and exclusive parties of that era. Whether every specific detail of those claims survives hard scrutiny is still debated. What cannot be debated is that a man with Suge's history and connections felt comfortable putting her name in that conversation at all. That alone shows how differently the industry's private memory of Oprah runs from the public one. On the streets and in certain back rooms, she was never just the inspirational talk show host. She was understood as someone who understood power, protected power, and benefited from proximity to it. This is the core tension that will not go away. The woman who built an empire on the language of truth and authenticity is now facing a growing list of people who say the brand was a performance. The same voice that told America to live their best life is accused by some of those who worked near her of deciding whose best life was allowed to continue and whose was quietly shut down. For years, the protective layer around her held. The cultural investment in the saint image was so deep that most criticism bounced off. That layer is thinning. Every new voice that refuses to stay quiet adds another crack, Toni Braxton's discomfort. Monique's detailed accusations of blackballing and personal ambush, the old head claims about the rooms she was willing to sit in, the selective silences around men whose behavior was open industry knowledge for decades. The question is no longer whether the cracks exist. They are visible. The only remaining question is how many more people who once protected the brand are ready to stop. The public still sees the woman who ended every episode with a lesson about living honestly. A growing number of people who collided with her power describe a gatekeeper who understood exactly how the system worked and used it with precision. The gap between those two versions is where the real story now lives. Chapter 2. Monique, Tyler Perry, and the Blackballing. One of the clearest and most public collisions in Oprah's long career came with Monique. In 2010, Monique won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for her raw, devastating performance in Precious. It should have been the launch pad. An Oscar win at that level usually opens every door in the industry. Instead, the major opportunities that should have followed simply never arrived at the scale they should have. The phone stopped ringing the way it does for most winners. Roles dried up. The momentum that an Academy Award is supposed to create never fully materialized. Monique has not been quiet about why. On Club Shay Shay, and in multiple detailed interviews since, she has laid out a consistent account. According to her, Tyler Perry later admitted he helped start and spread the rumor that she was difficult to work with. That label is one of the oldest and most effective ways to freeze a career in Hollywood, especially for a black woman who refuses to shrink herself. Once the word gets out that someone is hard to deal with, the offers slow down and the excuses multiply. But Monique's accusations go further than a single rumor. She has stated that certain roles were offered to her first and then somehow ended up with Oprah. She has specifically named the grandmother role in the planned Richard Pryor biopic that Lee Daniels was developing. She has pointed to The Butler, in which Oprah took a prominent part. In Monique's telling, these were not coincidences. They were the result of coordinated power. She has been clear and repetitive on this point. The problem was never simple competition between two successful black women. It was coordinated exclusion. The most personal and still raw wound she describes is the day Oprah brought members of her estranged family onto the Oprah Winfrey Show. That family included the brother who had sexually assaulted her. Monique has said she was only informed in advance about one person. When she arrived, a larger group of estranged relatives was already there. She has called the move malicious and intentional. In her own words, it was ugly. She has stated repeatedly that she will not release the anger until Oprah issues a public apology that actually owns the harm, not the soft, conditional language of, "if you think I did something wrong." That distinction matters to her. An apology that begins with, "if you feel," is not an apology that accepts responsibility. Monique has said the moment put her in an impossible position on national television and reopened trauma for the sake of a powerful narrative and strong ratings. From the outside, many viewers saw a high-profile attempt at family reconciliation, facilitated by the most famous talk show host in the world. From Monique's seat, it was an ambush. She has never softened that description. Oprah's public responses over the years have never matched the intensity or specificity of Monique's accusations. There has been no detailed accounting that satisfies the woman who says she lived it. The gap between the two versions remains wide. When a woman who has just won an Oscar states that the two biggest power players in Black Hollywood, Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey, worked in ways that limited her career, and that one of them later occupied roles that were first offered to her, the industry hears it. Most people simply choose not to repeat it out loud. The cost of speaking against that level of power is real and well understood. Monique has kept speaking anyway. She has refused to let the story fade into polite industry silence. In doing so, she has become one of the clearest living examples of what happens when someone with an Oscar still finds the doors quietly closing and decides the public deserves to know who was holding the keys. Chapter 3. The Olsen Twins and the Weight Question. There is a clip from 2004 that still makes people shift in their seats for a reason. Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen, 17 years old, sit across from Oprah Winfrey on the set of her daytime show. They are there to promote their movie, New York Minute. At the time, tabloids and gossip columns had been relentlessly focused on Mary-Kate's appearance. Rumors that she was battling an eating disorder were already loud and public. The pressure on both girls had been building for months. Oprah does not ease into the subject. She goes straight at it. I know a new rumor that's recently surfaced has really upset you, right? She says. There is a pause. Then she clarifies, you know, the one about eating. Ashley steps in to protect the moment. She tries to shut it down the way young stars are trained to shut these things down. People are going to write what they're going to write, she says. They try not to read the good or the bad. It comes with the territory. Either you're too fat or you're too skinny and people just write what they want. Before she can finish the sentence, Oprah interrupts.
You don't have a lot of that, or could I borrow a dress from you? You don't have a lot of that?
But I mean, no. A friend of mine is borrowing one of my dresses for prom, and but that's just fun.
Just fun stuff. Okay. I want to play a little game with you. We call it the Who Is game. So who's the most outgoing?
Mary Kate jumps in. They have always been petite, she says. They are short. They have to get almost everything taken in because nothing fits off the rack. The pants are always too long. Oprah's response is not soft. It is pointed and delivered with a smile that the studio audience rewards with laughter. Oh, that's so interesting. That is so interesting. I'm obsessed with size, and you're like, I really don't know. Mary Kate tries one more time to close the door. If they were obsessed with their size, she says, it would be a different story. The exchange lasts less than a minute. In that minute, a 50-year-old woman with one of the largest platforms on television turned two 17-year-old girls' bodies into entertainment while one of them was already in visible crisis. The audience laughed. The cameras kept rolling. The moment was broadcast to millions. Later that same year, in June 2004, Mary Kate Olsen checked into a treatment facility for what her representatives carefully called a health-related issue. Multiple outlets reported it as anorexia. She spent approximately 6 weeks in residential care, including time at a high-end facility, before being released in late July. She was 18 by then. The family and her team tried to keep the details limited, but the public already understood what the health-related issue meant. Defenders of the interview still reach for the same explanations. It was a different era. Body talk was more casual in the early 2000s. Oprah herself had spoken openly about her own weight struggles for years and perhaps thought she was being relatable. The show's format thrived on personal questions. Critics look at the same clip and see something else. A woman with enormous cultural power sat across from two teenagers who had been famous since infancy, one of whom was already the subject of intense speculation about an eating disorder, and chose to press the most invasive possible question for a reaction. When the girls tried to deflect, she did not let them. She turned their discomfort into a punchline that the audience rewarded. The power imbalance is the part that will not age out of the footage. These were not adult colleagues trading industry gossip. These were minors who had spent their entire lives under public scrutiny, sitting in the most watched daytime studio in America, while the most influential woman in that studio decided their clothing size was fair game for live television. The moment is smaller than the accusations of blackballing or selective silence that surround Oprah's name in other chapters of this story. It does not involve career destruction or private islands. It is simply a clear recording of a boundary being pushed for television, followed by the knowledge that one of the young women on the receiving end entered treatment for anorexia months later. That sequence is why the clip keeps resurfacing. It fits the larger pattern people keep describing when they talk about Oprah's public persona versus the private exercise of her power. The performance of concern paired with a willingness to keep going when the other person is visibly uncomfortable, especially when the discomfort makes for stronger television. In 2004, the laughter in the studio suggested most people in the room did not see a problem. In the years since, the same footage has been called out repeatedly as an example of how even the culture's self-appointed moral center could treat a young woman's body as content. The twins have largely stayed private about the exchange. They did not need to say more. The tape already shows what happened. Chapter 4. Weinstein, Russell Simmons, and Selective Silence. When the Harvey Weinstein story finally exploded in 2017, Oprah Winfrey was asked about it in public.
Yeah, I'm always trying to look for the rainbow in the cloud, whatever is the silver lining. And this is what I do know for sure. When something this major happens, when you have the fallout, 50 women coming forward, that it's a watershed moment. And what I do believe is actually happening.
What she did not do was examine her own long personal and professional relationship with Weinstein. She did not dig into the years of proximity, the industry events, the overlapping circles of power, or what she had heard and when she had heard it. Rose McGowan and other survivors noticed the gap immediately. McGowan has been blunt in her assessment. In her view, Oprah supported a sick power structure when it still benefited her, and only found her public voice once the risk calculation had already shifted and silence became more dangerous than speaking. That criticism lands harder because Oprah had one of the largest platforms in the world for decades. She could have amplified stories earlier. She could have used her cultural authority to make certain open secrets harder to ignore. Instead, the most forceful statements came after the dam had already broken and the cost of continued silence had risen. The Russell Simmons situation followed a similar shape. Multiple women have accused Simmons of rape and sexual assault over a period of years. The allegations are detailed in public. At one point, Oprah had been developing a documentary project that would have given some of those stories a major platform. She later pulled out. The stated reason was creative differences with the filmmakers. The women involved and their advocates heard a different message. When the project moved too close to a man who was still connected to the old power network, the platform disappeared.
And his alleged abuse of women. And I think people question, why would Oprah, of all people, do that?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I have lived Me Too since I was 9 years old and was raped at 9, sexually assaulted from 9 to 14, and then raped again at 14. And nothing is harder than standing up for yourself when you're 14 and not being believed. And I was not believed by my own family.
The pattern people describe is consistent across both cases. It is not that Oprah created these men or directed their behavior. It is that she moved comfortably among them for years. She shared industry space, social proximity, and the protective benefits of that network. While the abuse was open knowledge inside certain rooms, her public posture remained largely silent or carefully generalized. Only when the cultural wind shifted, when #MeToo made continued association more costly than distance, did the language of accountability become more prominent. This is the core of the selective silence charge. A woman who built an empire on the language of truth, vulnerability, and speaking out is accused of applying those values unevenly. When the stories involved people outside her immediate power network, the platform was available. When the stories threatened men who still held influence inside the same structure she moved within, the platform became conditional or disappeared. Rose McGowan's criticism remains one of the sharpest. She has described Oprah as someone who, in her view, was willing to support the existing power arrangement as long as it served her interests, and who only adjusted once the public mood made adjustment necessary. Whether every detail of that assessment is fair is still debated. What is harder to debate is the timeline. The strongest public statements came after the stories had already broken, not before. The same timeline appears with Simmons. Development of a project that would have centered the accusers' voices was underway. Then it was not. The public explanation stayed polite. The private interpretation from those who had hoped for the platform was that proximity to the old network still carried more weight than the new cultural pressure. This is why the chapter sits where it does in the larger story. It is not about claiming Oprah invented the abuse. It is about the repeated choice over years to remain inside a system while using a public brand built on the opposite values. The warmth and the moral language were real on camera. The selective application of that language, according to the people who collided with the consequences, was also real. When the cultural cost of silence finally rose high enough, the statements came. Until then, the silence had been loud enough on its own. Chapter 5. The Diddy Connection and the Most Extreme Claims. This is the chapter where the story leaves the territory of documented industry conflict and enters the darker, murkier zone of the most explosive online claims. Up to this point, the criticisms of Oprah have rested on public records, on-camera moments, and statements from people who put their names behind their accounts. Monique spoke on camera. The OLSEN interview is on tape. The Weinstein and Russell Simmons timelines can be checked. What comes next lives in a different category. Anonymous industry voices, circulating leaks, and a set of allegations so extreme that mainstream outlets have largely refused to touch them. According to those underground claims, Oprah was not merely adjacent to Diddy's world. She was actively involved in containing it. The most extreme version, circulating in certain corners of the internet, alleges that she spent tens of millions of dollars to acquire specific tapes involving Diddy and young male stars, Names that repeatedly surface include Justin Bieber and Aaron Carter, for the purpose of controlling the material rather than exposing it. These claims remain completely unverified by any mainstream investigation. No official channel connected to Oprah has ever confirmed them. They have been denied or ignored. They continue to spread in the same online circuits that amplified Diddy allegations for years before the federal case made those allegations impossible to dismiss. What is documented is the broader ecosystem around Diddy. The parties, the allegations of coercion and control, the steady traffic of celebrities through those rooms, the long list of powerful people who were present, adjacent, or silent. Oprah's name has been pulled into that conversation by multiple figures who insist the silence around those events was not accidental. Whether her name belongs there as an active participant or simply as another powerful person who chose not to look too closely is exactly the question the extreme claims try to answer, without providing the kind of evidence that would survive a courtroom or a serious newsroom. The deaths add another layer of online suspicion that refuses to quiet down. Aaron Carter died in November 2022. In the period leading up to his death, he had publicly engaged with the same circle of accusations and industry darkness that later exploded around Diddy. Online communities immediately connected the timing. No official investigation has ever linked his death to those statements. The official cause was ruled accidental. That has not stopped the speculation. Then there is TikTok creator Kyle Marissa Roth. She posted content discussing Diddy and Oprah. Days later, she was found dead. Again, no official link has been established. Again, the internet treated the timing as a signal rather than a coincidence. The pattern people keep pointing to is the same one that appears throughout these stories. When certain names get too close to the most protected circles, the conversation sometimes ends abruptly. None of this proves the extreme tape claims. It does not prove coordination. It does not prove that any specific powerful figure ordered silence or worse. What it does is feed the larger suspicion that has grown around Oprah's public brand. The woman who spent decades presenting herself as the moral center of the culture is now repeatedly named in the same underground conversations that treat the entertainment industry as a protected system of predation and cover-up. Her loudest critics argue that the silence was structural, that when the truth threatened the network she moved inside, the network protected itself, and she was part of that protection for a very long time. The claims about purchasing and controlling tapes sit at the far edge of credibility for most serious observers. They rely on anonymous sources, secondhand accounts, and the same style of industry insider language that has produced both real revelations and pure fabrication over the years. Treating them as established fact would be irresponsible. Ignoring the fact that they continue to spread and that they attach themselves so easily to Oprah's name would also miss something real about the current moment. The Diddy case cracked open a door that many powerful people preferred to keep closed. Once that door opened, every major figure who had moved in overlapping circles became subject to new scrutiny. Some of that scrutiny is grounded in testimony and documents. Some of it is pure conspiracy. The difficulty is that the two now travel together in the same online streams, and the public's trust in official denials has been damaged by how long the earlier Diddy allegations were dismissed. So the questions hang there, unanswered and still circulating. Did Oprah's proximity to certain rooms and certain men ever cross into active containment? Are the tape claims a serious lead that investigators have simply not pursued? Or are they the kind of dark fantasy that attaches itself to every powerful woman once the culture turns on the old system? Why do the deaths of people who spoke near these topics keep getting folded into the same narrative, even when official rulings point elsewhere? The extreme claims may never be proven. They may eventually be fully debunked. What cannot be easily dismissed is the speed with which Oprah's name now appears in the same conversations as the darkest allegations of the Diddy era. For a brand built on light, transparency, and moral clarity, that association alone is a form of damage. And for the people who have long argued that the same image was a performance, these unverified leaks feel less like random noise and more like the next logical chapter in a story they believe was always heading this way. The truth, if it ever fully surfaces, will have to come from somewhere more solid than anonymous posts and timing coincidences. Until then, the suspicions remain exactly what they are: loud, unresolved, and increasingly difficult for the old protective narratives to silence. Chapter 6: Whitney, Michael, and the Posthumous Narrative. Even the dead have not been left alone. Oprah recently recounted the story of Whitney Houston falling on stage while under the influence and claimed she begged the audience not to spread it at the time to protect her. The new telling struck many as a strange choice. Whitney is gone. The people who loved her as a cultural sister and auntie did not ask for another public reminder of her lowest moments, framed as Oprah's noble secrecy. The same discomfort appeared around Leaving Neverland. When timeline problems and credibility questions surfaced about the documentary, Oprah held the line. She compared it to cases she had seen with girls at her school who could not remember exact days or times under trauma. Critics heard a woman refusing to revisit a narrative she had already platformed, even as new doubts emerged. To her defenders, these are examples of a woman trying to protect the vulnerable. To her critics, they are examples of a woman who decides which victims are useful and which stories get to keep their dignity. Chapter 7. The Pattern That Will Not Go Away. Put the pieces side by side. A young Monique who wins an Oscar and then finds the industry doors quietly closing while the same powerful women take roles that were first offered to her. Teenage Olsen twins pressed about their bodies on national television. A long friendship with Weinstein that produced careful general statements instead of early accountability. A documentary about Russell Simmons' accusers that got dropped. Extreme underground claims linking her to the containment of Diddy's worst material. Public stories about Whitney and Michael that many felt served the living storyteller more than the dead. The public. Oprah is the woman who ends every episode with a lesson about living truthfully. The private version, described by people who collided with her power, is a gatekeeper who understood exactly how the system worked and used it with precision. None of this means every claim is proven. Some of the most explosive allegations remain in the realm of anonymous leaks and online investigation. What is no longer deniable is that the number of people willing to say the brand was a performance has grown, and the old protective silence is cracking. Oprah Winfrey built an empire on the idea that truth sets you free. The people now speaking say she applied that rule selectively, freely when it elevated her, carefully when it threatened the network she moved inside. The question that remains is the same one hanging over every major figure from that era. When the full weight of the Diddy case and the broader industry reckoning finishes landing, will the woman who once seemed untouchable finally have to answer for the rooms she was in and the voices she helped quiet? Or will the machine that protected her for 50 years find a way to keep the most powerful brand in media insulated one more time? The leaks are not slowing down. The people who used to be afraid are talking louder. If you want the next layer of this story, the specific names, the timelines, and the claims still being investigated, subscribe and turn on the notifications. The era of perfect public images is ending. What comes next will not be gentle.